Hello. Welcome to the next installment of the DSend Pod. Haven't really settled on that name yet, so still kind of open to any other thoughts that anybody might have here. But honestly, just kind of putting my thoughts out there to try to find like-minded people and see if we can come up with ways to fix the problems that the world is currently facing. So, today's episode, I'm going to talk about something that's honestly kind of a low-hanging fruit. It's kind of all over the media right now, but the recent assassination or shooting of Charlie Kirk, I think, is kind of everywhere. And I think it's something worth talking about. And I will just kind of start this episode with saying I do not condone this kind of violence, nor will it solve any of our problems. And that's really kind of the goal of this podcast, this discussion is seeing if we can come up with some problems for the things that are going on around us. But to me, I think this episode, this assassination, honestly brings up a lot bigger issues, and that's probably, at least in my opinion, maybe the bigger part to talk about if we're going to try to take something from this. So, um, wanted to kind of talk about some of those issues that it sort of hallmarks for me. So, um, first one is we have people still kind of recovering from everything the pandemic brought. Second part, and I'm going to kind of go into all these in a little bit more detail, but the second part is right now, honestly, people, and in particular young people, are facing higher prices, and from all metrics, our well-being really isn't that great at the moment. And I think that brings up a lot of problems. And then we're also seeing a whole bunch of partisanship that's pretty much just kind of ubiquitous in the world now. I mean, you really can't say much of anything without your opinion being or sounding politicized. Um, and then I think we also have really just a lack of true leadership in the world right now, and in particular our country. And my opinion, honestly, is um, all of these things together really create just kind of a perfect storm for why situations like this are happening, or why we're seeing these assassinations, or people acting out, honestly, in rather violent ways. So to address this first thought that I had is, we still have people recovering from the pandemic. I'm not going to talk too much about this, but I think there's still a lot of harbored resentment for the restrictions that were placed during the pandemic. So people even getting upset about having to wear a mask, having to stay home, social distancing, etc., and things like that. Which I think honestly is a rather silly thing to feel resentment about, but I do think there's probably still a lot of that. People just don't really like being told what to do oftentimes, even if it's something for public health. That being said, I am very much of the strong belief that to take something from my father, honestly, your freedoms end at my nose. And basically, what that means is, um, if your freedoms, your ability, your decisions end up affecting or directly affecting me, that's where your freedom ends. You do not get to make your choices that are going to directly affect me, because that's limiting and inhibiting my choices to make for my own life. So I think there's still a lot of resentment out there for some of the stuff that the pandemic brought, and some of those restrictions that were made. The economy is also honestly still recovering, much like people are still recovering, and it's now unfortunately kind of in complete disarray with just about every metric that we can look at, and really just kind of has an absurd amount of uncertainty and volatility in it that's sort of being infused into our economy and um, everything that's kind of coming with that. Um, and I think it's honestly being done purposely to promote and sow chaos throughout the country, because it's easier to control people when there's chaos. I know that sounds contradictory, but people, when they're in the midst of chaos, look for some sort of consistency. They look for some sort of brighter light, higher calling, whatever it's going to be. And the person that can give them that in that chaos has complete control over the masses. And I'm a little bit worried that some of that is trying to happen right now. So Second point, people have less money. We're facing higher prices. And really, from all metrics, mental well being in this country is at an all time low. Maybe that's because we're actually measuring those things now, but that doesn't make it any less true in terms of mental health and mental well being. But it is very much true because of multiple economy things as well as inflationary prices, and really just the cost of living in general has gone up a lot. Um, I won't say too much about this because I'm still learning a little bit how this is all being affected, and I think we as a country are still learning a lot about this. But again, another low-hanging fruit is tariffs are raising the prices for consumers. You can politicize that all you want to, but it is a quite simple fact. There's a lot of things out there to say that all of those costs from tariffs are not being paid by the other countries that are supposed to be paying them. And at the end, it's going to be American companies and American consumers that are going to pay those tariffs. And that is coming to fruition now. We are seeing the cost of a lot of things that are affected by tariffs starting to come up now. And everybody that, any economist that would tell you, even just reading a economy 101 kind of textbook will tell you exactly what's going to happen with the tariffs. And it takes several months before you see the effects on the consumers, but it always does come down to the consumers paying the prices on that. We're also just seeing in general increased costs of living. I mean, housing prices is absolutely ridiculous. That your average 20 or 30-year old now can barely afford a home if they can at all. Most of them can't, honestly. I don't remember the last thing I had heard. I think the average cost of a home in America now is something in the 400 something thousand dollars, which is just dramatically different than our parents' generations and their situation. And they basically kind of grew up with the idea that if you went to work every day, you worked hard for your life, you end up being able to retire, you have plenty of money. And that's because we still had things like pensions and reasonable retirement plans, which honestly we just don't have anymore. And we also used to see that you could afford a house and a family based on one salary, and that's just absolutely nowhere near the case now. You see many people working one, two, three jobs, maybe four jobs even in a household to be able to have those things. And if you don't work those things, then you're sort of made to believe that you are a failure. And I think social media definitely plays into a lot of that, that we see, the highlight reel of everybody else around us, and they all seem to be living the dream life that we want to. They're making lots of money, traveling, eating fancy and amazing foods. And truly, I feel like, our generation or anybody that doesn't have that, if they're still on social media things, is made to feel like they are truly a failure if they have not achieved those things. And that goes into the mental well-being that we're all struggling with now. Um, just honestly, kind of an interesting statistic that I think just seems absurd to me, but unemployment throughout the country is still relatively low. Honestly, it's at 4.3%. And it is climbing a little bit depending on which month you're looking at it, but it's still, historically relatively low at 4.3%. However, the unemployment for people aged 18 to 24 is 10.5%. It is greater than two times the rest of the country. That means people that are either coming out of high school or college just do not have the opportunities to get a job and make money. And that's going to make them frustrated. Then they feel like they're left out of everything else. They're made to already feel like they're failures because they haven't been able to accomplish these grandiose kind of things in terms of buying a house, getting married, traveling, doing ridiculous things. And then you also don't give them a job and they feel like they can't even have the chance to obtain those things. And so, sure, it's not surprising to me, honestly, that younger kids aged 18 to 24 or anywhere in that range are going to start acting out. I will also say, honestly, many economists will say that unemployment in the younger groups, like those 18 to 24-year-olds, is really honestly just kind of the first metric of generally recessionary or worsening of the economy or worsening in unemployment to come for the other groups. And that's because they're the last ones to get hired because they're just coming out of school or high school or whatever. They're the first ones to get fired as well because other people have been there longer. And so they're the ones expected to be, having a higher unemployment rate. But the fact that it is, I mean, almost three times, two and a half times greater than the rest of the country for that age group, again, you create this perfect storm of poor mental health, not being able to get a job, feeling like you're a failure, and pent up energy from, the economy and the pandemic kind of things. And yeah, that's a nice recipe for resentment and acting out, even if you want to simplify it that way. And violence is usually the way that those people feel like is the only way for them to act out and get noticed or make their point or whatever. So those things definitely come into play there. The third point I was going to make is that this partisanship is just getting absolutely out of control. I mean, I can't be the only one that feels like you can't say any sort of opinion, whether it's a political one or not, without it being politicized or sounding politicized, including the statement that I just made right there. Like, anything I say in this recording or in this video, can easily be misconstrued, and that really is the word for it, to be a political misstatement. And these are not political things that I'm saying so far. Some of the other partisanship stuff that we're just seeing in the news that I think are worth mentioning is I saw a news article just a couple of days ago that the GOP broke some long-standing precedent to literally change the rules because they weren't getting what they were wanting in the House of Representatives. They're trying to confirm Trump's nominees for different, honestly, low-level offices, and they're unable to because it should be and has historically been a bipartisan thing that these nominees get confirmed. And right now, honestly, the two parties don't want to play at all. And so the GOP, who currently has control in the House, literally just changed the rules because they weren't getting what they wanted. They felt like they were being hung up or weren't able to confirm these nominees. And so instead of needing a 60% majority in order to confirm them, they changed it so that they just needed a simple majority, 50% or greater than 50%, I guess. And I think it's just kind of absurd that we live in a world now where our elected officials, our supposed leaders, are literally getting just to the point that they're frustrated enough, and instead of trying to work together to actually solve the problem and fix the issues, they just change the literal rules so that they can get what they want. That's not any way to get anything done. I mean, that's enough in the short term to get these things going, but it's not going to work long term, and it's just going to change the next time the power changes, and that just seems useless to me. And I can't be the only one that's frustrated with that. The Democrats had been trying to use filibusters to delay these confirmations, and as far as I understand it, obviously I don't have a lot of political background, but the filibuster really is designed to protect the minority so that the majority can't just push through whatever policies they want to. It is a literal last-ditch effort for the minority, if everything else fails, to stop what they feel is an inappropriate thing for their party, for their plans, for whatever, and make the other side come to the table. And that filibuster now means absolutely nothing because the party in power just changed the rules so that it doesn't matter anymore. And again, to me, that seems absolutely absurd. It's not setting a good standard or a good model, honestly, for any generations coming up. And it just, I mean, to me, it sounds like an angry child who isn't getting what they want. So instead of doing something about it, instead of improving themselves or working or discussing or coming to the table to have conversations, they just change the rules and get what they want then. I honestly wonder if maybe, maybe these nominees honestly are just that bad and they shouldn't be confirmed. Instead of having a conversation of whether they should or should not be confirmed, the GOP just literally changed the rules so they can confirm them based on party lines, and that's it. And there's nothing apparently that is being done or can be done about it. And I think we've seen I think we've seen honestly what happens when you put an unqualified person or unqualified people in influential positions. I'm not even going to mention, well, that's not true. Apparently, I am going to mention The use of ChatGPT with the leadership, with the current administration when they first came into office, literally using ChatGPT to make up these tariff ideas. That's what happens when you put unqualified people in influential positions. And so it is worthwhile to vet these people and make sure that they should actually be in the positions that they're being nominated for. And instead of vetting them, the party in power is literally just pushing them through by cheating and changing the rules. Fourth point I was going to make is that and I think this is probably one of the more important ones, and I was kind of getting into it with this last one, but I think right now we have, really a lack of any sort of true leadership. The public figures that are there right now are either boisterous narcissists that talk out of their asses, and I'm convinced are either stupid enough to believe what they're saying, or they're smart enough to use that as distractions from some other shady manipulations that they're doing behind the scenes that we all aren't privy to. Again, these are public figures. These are people that are influential in terms of making decisions and people that others should be able to look up to and look to for leadership and guidance and stability. And instead of doing that, they're just sowing more chaos, more discontent to either push through the things that they believe if they are stupid enough to believe these things that they're saying, or they're just distracting from the things that we actually need to talk about and the conversations that really need to be had. Either that or the other public figures that we have, honestly, I'll just go out and say it, that the GOP, the right side of things right now, seem to be the ones in power, and therefore they're creating these distractions or spewing these just unbelievable and ridiculous kind of lies, really, about everything. Or you got the other side, you got the left, the Democratic Party at least, that those public figures, honestly, are really just coming across as weak, apathetic, betas, or yes people. And so right now, if we look to our public figures for any sort of leadership, we either have ones that are lying to our faces or trying to sow discontent on purpose, and we have other ones that are rolling over and not doing anything about it. True leadership honestly makes everyone better. It is not just for the person who is there in power. It's a person who really more so, it's not just a person, honestly, it's more so a way of being and a way of doing that others see and experience and say, yeah, I want to be a part of that. I want to go where that person is going. I want to be part of what he or she is creating. It's not selfishness. It's not bullying or machismo or apathy or, honestly, I'm sure I can come up with 50 other words to describe it. It's not even action for the sake of action, which also seems to be one of the ways that this current administration is trying to measure its success, is just by the number of things that they've done, even if they're not productive or useful or helpful things. In particular, you have the rating of a Hyundai battery and electric car facility to remove 470 reportedly illegal immigrants, even though the stated immigration policy of this administration is looking for removing the violent criminals that are supposedly here illegally, and instead they go after, a car factory, a battery factory. That seems a little bit ridiculous, and then removed 470 people from this factory. And then they're also trying to say that they're trying to bolster American manufacturing, ignoring the effort and the money that it took to get this project together, as well as the people that it took to put together through it. And a lot of these 470 people, if we're going to call them illegal or not, a lot of them knew what they were doing to be able to build this factory and build these batteries and the cars that are needed. I read an article the other day that said that it would take an average of about 5 years to train an American to be able to do the things that these 470 people were doing there, or to train Americans to be able to do it. These people were working in a factory under pretenses that they could do it. You have to also question as to how they got hired if supposedly the vetting process is something that we're using. And we just got rid of all of them, and the work and the time and the energy and the money and the resources that went into creating this project is literally just going to go to shit because we're not going to have the people that can take over from here. They lost a huge percentage of their workers there, and nobody in America knows how to do what they were doing there, which means that the project is just going to go to hell, and all of that money, time, energy, resources, whatever, is going to be wasted. Additionally, it seems like you can't really say much of anything anymore without it coming back to you. And again, this, to me, this goes back to leadership, that our leadership is weak and rolling over to what they think needs to be done without being, yelled at, scolded, compromised, whatever, or seeking the wrath of the piece of shit that's in office now. Just an example of this is there was a U.S. Secret Service agent that I saw an article about this that was put on leave for expressing a negative opinion about Charlie Kirk. So to me, I kind of have to ask, what happened to freedom of speech? How is it that somebody even in the U.S. government can't speak their mind if they're doing it in a peaceful way? He didn't say anything that would spark an insurrection, maybe like somebody else in power. He said, and I quote this, that Kirk had, quote, spewed hate and racism in his show. At the end of the day, you answer to God and speak things into existence. You can only circumvent karma. She doesn't leave. Honestly, I would love to hear from anybody as to how this warrants a government official, a U.S. Secret Service agent, being put on leave. Like, we should be able to say things like that and not worry about losing our job. That is freedom of speech, that we can say those things. He wasn't doing it in any sort of, insightful way or trying to incite violence or anything like that. He did it peacefully. He did it on his own personal platform. And that's not something that should be punished in America. We have the freedom of speech. We can speak our minds as long as we do it peacefully. And that's what this person did. And instead of that being accepted, he was put on leave, I imagine, because this administration will pressure and shut down any opposition that they have to them. Finally, honestly, on that leadership kind of piece, that there's an article from the Washington Post and actually another piece as well that said the same thing, but the title was Trump Vows Crackdown on Critics After Slaying of Charlie Kirk. I don't think I really have more to add to this. I mean, how do we have literally the person that's supposed to be the leader of this country? He is the representative of our entire country making decisions for us, and he comes out and says he's going to go after critics. That to me is fascism. That is suppressing freedom of speech. That is not the American way, and fuck him for that. So honestly, all those things together, it's not really surprising that we're at a point that many people feel like the only option they have is a dramatic one, whether it be violence or otherwise. I'm not surprised that we are at this point. We've seen it before in this country. It's come up. And honestly, if there's going to be a revolution, or if you want to create a situation where a revolution can happen, start suppressing and start shutting down or trying to shut down the younger generation. That's really what happens. When you do that, is they're going to rise up, they're going to revolt, and that's what this administration is going to have on their hands if they keep going the way that we're going. We as a country, I believe, are I think being groomed by this administration and this president in particular, and it's become so disappointingly commonplace to hear our elected officials just spew lie after lie, deny or shut down any comments or evidence that is contrary to what they're trying to spread, or even what they believe, and ignore anything resembling reason or fair play. And again, that is fascism. That is suppressing citizens of this country. And I think they're doing it on purpose because they're trying to get us used to seeing these things. They want us to believe their lies. They want us to believe that lying is okay. And that's part of what they're grooming for. We're inundated with ridiculous thing after ridiculous thing, literally every day from media sources. This administration just picks something different every day to make the media, and you seriously can't get away from it, and it just creates so much noise. But not only do you not get a break from it, you also can't filter out what's true and what's not true, what's real and not real, what's important and what's not. And that's honestly just the brain's natural protection mechanism when it's constantly flooded with input. It just can't filter out. It has to just kind of shut down and not get everything there. So we're also seeing federal agents in major cities across America, so we can become accustomed to that. We're seeing little incremental takeovers of the government in the private sectors, and we're getting used to that. And I think really the average person just basically sees that there's no other options other than to get on board or be swept aside and cast out. And I think people get uncomfortable talking about or relating this to any sort of thing with Hitler or Nazi Germany or whatever, but really, in so many ways, anybody that knows history, which this administration, I would argue, probably doesn't know much of any, we are just a small catastrophe or small stress away from being 1930s Germany. And if that's offensive to you, honestly, good. But history can only repeat itself when you fail to learn its lesson. So, with all of that, honestly, I'm going to leave you with a quote. This is by Napoleon Hill in his Think and Grow Rich book. But I think it also kind of explains a lot of what's going on, and that we're just getting so numb to all of this stuff that it just becomes commonplace, and that's not the America that I or anybody else really wants to live in. But here's the quote: is when people first come into contact with crime, they abhor it. If they remain in contact with crime for a time, they become accustomed to it and endure it. If they remain in contact with it long enough, they will finally embrace it and become influenced by it. I'm not going to say anything more. I honestly think we all need to dwell on that quote. And if anybody has any thoughts, ideas, or want to share things, feel free to get in touch with me or comment, like, post, whatever. And if you want to hear more, if you have different things that you want to hear about, like or subscribe, or honestly just send me a note, and I'm happy to talk about it. And with that, I'll be signing off. But thanks for listening.